of you who don't know me, I'm just going to share screen for a little bit. All right. So this is basically me, a corporate dropout, 20 years of operations. I've, since I started the business, I've helped over now 500 agencies in 5 continents, which we're really proud of. And when people ask, oh, well, what types of agencies? 6, 7, and 8-figure agencies, everything from, your local PPC shop to your SEO shop to we're doing, full stack development, creative, everything in between, right? So, and now we've picked up, tons of communication shops as well. So, really we run the gamut of digital marketing agencies. And the reason why I wanted to work with digital marketing agencies, sometimes people will ask, is way back when, like, it was really the big disruptors in how the future of work was starting to happen, right? It was fragmented teams, geographically independent, all over the place. You've got, nearshoring, offshoring, white labeling, co-labeling, strategic partnerships, the whole gamut. And how did we create systems and processes to run a fully digital operation across all these different types of teams? I love a challenge. That was a challenge back then. This was, kind of pre-pandemic times. And now, this business model has evolved. Everyone, has had to use this level of business model, and I really love it. And now, we're getting into the sort of new vanguard in the future of work using AI. I feel like there hasn't been anything really exciting in the operations world for probably like 50 years. So I'm just totally geeked out. I'm very excited. And I'm like, yes, let's do it. So I wanted to show you guys, so I took a mini hiatus from LinkedIn for a little bit. But I'm back on it, and I thought this was fascinating. So I've been taking a couple polls, and this was one from last year where we asked people like, oh, like, why don't you have enough time, right? Because that's like the general thing. People come to us and they're like, Juliana, we're out of capacity, or we need to build capacity for the team, whatever the case might be. And it's like, okay, we don't have time. So, we had created a poll. This was last year, as you can see. And, and it was 29% because I can't delegate, one reason or other, right? 23%, I have no documented processes. Now, for a lot of the agencies that we work with, which are, mostly like the 7-figure agencies and, some of the 8, like, they have documentation. It's just not totally there, right? So documentation-ish is what I call it. Like, we live a lot in the ish. So we've got documentation-ish. We've got pieces of documentation. Some teams might have documentation. Other teams may not have documentation. People aren't using the documentation consistently. There's an algo change, and now we got to change the documentation. So, because that doesn't happen in marketing ever. And so it's like, right? So it's really hard to keep up with. It's a massive lift to do. And most team members aren't really using it, nor are they using it consistently. And half the time they can't even find the shit, right? So that's a lot of the issues when it comes with like when you're scaling or when you're into, scaling quickly or just being really efficient and profitable. Like, how do we get this piece of it so that we can plug people in and plug them out and not be hijacked by a team member that probably holds like the information that is really important to you in their head, right? So income SOPs, and I'm gonna use the word SOP lightly, right? Because I'm really gonna talk about training, right? So static training, not, we're not gonna get into like learning and development and comprehension. Like literally just, do you have instructions, step-by-step instructions? So that's what, we can get into the different types and how does that work and all that jazz, but we're not going to get deep dive too much into that piece because we only got an hour. And then today I put up a poll, and this was like 6 hours ago, which is interesting. So most people are using AI for content creation, duh. And about 17% are starting to use it for documentation, which is exciting. Now, I would say this sample set, one, is not statistically significant, and two, it's biased because the people that follow me are into ops. So there you go, right? Like if we had a wider sample set, we'd probably get a different answer. So I was excited and impressed for the people that are using it. And I think probably maybe like 17% of you are, which is kind of cool. So then the next thing I want to just talk about is training and what SOP looks like and what it's starting to look like. And then from here, we're just to ask questions. Sound good? Okay, so when we have training for a team, right, which is usually when people start to think through like, oh man, I need process, or I need SOPs, or I need processes, or, you know, documentation, insert your favorite noun. There's a couple ways to do this, right? Either the owner pays for training, you know, or pays for SOPs. That's like your quick and dirty fix, right? Whether it's a certification, I've got HubSpot, you know, certs, I've got, you know, if you've been on Instagram, you've gotten the click-minded ads, right? Most people have bought them, right? There's like a million templates out there for stuff that you can buy. So that's an option, right? The other option is someone who is a subject matter expert on the team, usually the owner or, you know, one of the managers, whether it's a marketing manager, production manager, whomever it may be, creates training for team members. This oftentimes feels like a luxury. Oftentimes people don't have time to create training. Right? They're like, who's got time for that? Although we do know that training increases productivity by 25%, right? Which then increases profitability, right? Because literally out of every 4 employees on a team, you can save 1 if you create training, right? So, which is pretty nice. It can save tons of overhead. Usually people just don't have the time to invest in that level of capacity. So the other way of training is, you know, like the team member creates the training as part of their onboarding. So it's kind of like, hey, by the way, this is kind of the stuff that I want you to learn, and and create the training while you're at it. Thank you very much. So that is. Another piece of it could be, you know, it's kind of like we do a live training and then we have a video and then we're going to stick the video in Loom. I saw the Loom, Priyanka, and that's the training for the next person, hopefully, right? Things don't change too much. So those are usually the different types of training. And then there's, you know, just training by osmosis, right? You kind of shadow someone and you hope, cross your fingers that they get it and then they can reproduce it. So those are the different types of training that we can do, right? And so to capture information. On the right-hand side, oh, Elle, I'm gonna mute you. I think that's you. Yeah, that's you. Then on the right-hand side, right, what we want to do is kind of capture a video of some sort, grab transcription, right? From the transcription, create an SOP, right? And then eventually, maybe we get Slack questions. And if someone remembers, they will take those questions and then put them back into the SOP, right? That is usually what I have, you know, shown people to do as the dirty drafts of SOP creation, right? Like this is the fastest way that you've been able to create things until now, right? More or less. Unless you've got like someone who's a superstar on your team, they can do it all and they're like junior and it doesn't cost you a ton of money. That's incredible. For most teams, this is kind of like the best practice to actually get it done, as opposed to just having, you know, a repository of either all documents or all videos somewhere, right? This is like for different types of learning styles. But now with Chat GPT and AI, there's different ways of capturing the information and doing it so that it's so much faster and so much easier. And that's what we're here to explore. So I'd love to take questions from everyone. feel free to screen grab this. I'm sure most of you already have. So, and I can send it to you, anyone who wants it later. But, like what we want to do is basically make this workflow like 5 times more efficient. Like that's basically what we want to do, so that people can have the documentation, and not only have the documentation, but be able to update it. Because that's the key, right? Because things are changing so quickly. Can we actually, have that feedback loop as quickly as possible? So, all right, I'm going to open up the floor. And Michael, I know you asked me for the gap analysis sheet. Did you get it? Were you able to do it? No, did I lose you?
Sorry, no, not before the call, unfortunately.
All right, you are all good.
But
all right,
thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm going to open up the floor and let's ask some questions.
So Juliana, I got a couple questions for you.
Go for it.
So I'm kind of poised for some fairly rapid expansion this year. I'm going to have to put on quite a few people, and I've got an offer that's taking off, and I need to, kind of expand. And I've always been a onesie twosie, a couple of assistants in my operation. I still do what I used to do in the past when you and I worked together. So I'm still doing high ticket consultative sales, but I'm building out a process with a client of mine. We're doing a partnership, and I think I'm going to need to, get SOPs really set up. And that's one of the reasons I jumped on today. So can you kind of walk me through what would you suggest would using Chat GPT? What would you suggest for the steps of starting the formation of things if you had to get it from off the ground from the, basically from the start?
Yeah, so first of all, I would think through, so when we're thinking about SOP creation, training, documentation, we want to think about what is your highest volume, right? Because in theory, in your business, there's 20 million things that, you can document. And that's hard. So I would say, let's start with, and the first things that I would start with is delivery. Right. So think through delivery, because that's, you got to get money in the door, you got to deliver it, and you got to, make sure that the quality is there, especially if you're like in some sort of hyper growth. Or if you're like tearing your hair out and you're like, you need efficiency and you need capacity, right? Either or, start with delivery and 80-20 it, right? Like what is the 20% of the services that are making 80% of the money, right? Because usually it's that. So let's prioritize first those things that you need to get off the ground, that you need to document, that you need to hire for. And as an aside for anybody else, right? Like when you're looking to prioritize, you want to see like, where's the opportunity? Where's the risk? Or where are you bleeding? Which is usually the risk, right? Like where are you losing money? Sometimes there might be an event, what I call an event, like someone's leaving, right? Or you need to hire someone, or you need to hire a team. These types of things will force you to prioritize over other things. So Jim, back to you. So I'd look at, okay, let's prioritize, let's figure out, what the documentation needs to be. And then who is the subject matter expert that's going to, basically download their brain, right? So whose brain do we need to download? And then are they already doing the work, or are they starting work for the first time? Is my question, Jim.
Yeah, so I'm shifting into an operational position in this partnership, where I'm basically going to be running things the way that I've been doing it for the last couple of years. So those SOPs and that piece of it is pretty set. I'm just going to build out the sales team under me, for the operational pieces of it. I'm just going to, I'm going to need to put in, and prioritize the things that some of the people that are going to be assisting the subject matter expert, who is the actual partner that I'm working with.
Okay. So is it SOPs for the sales team, and just give me a little bit, like, and you're the sales manager for the team, or how does that?
Well, I'm gonna hire out the sales manager from some of the people that I've supervised in the past. So I'm gonna have
Okay.
a sales team and sales management under me. I'm gonna be operational, like the chief operations officer of the company.
Okay.
I've got the subject matter expert in his corner. I'm having him
Okay.
do his thing. I've shoved him into the room, so he'll do the delivery that I need for the clients. And
Okay.
the other pieces are just the operational pieces. Go ahead.
Okay, so I mean, whoever the SME is, like I would have them download how they're right. So if you already have some SOPs, I would centralize them into a wiki, right? And so I like so some people like Notion. Notion is great if you like to architect. I don't like to architect. I don't have the patience for it. I mean, the UI is beautiful if you have someone on your team who has the patience and vision to do that. The other one is GetGuru. I like GetGuru a lot from a wiki standpoint as like an internal depository for all your SOPs because it's more about velocity and searchability. So it uses more of like a tagging system. So you can like create something, tag it, and then it'll automatically index itself like within business divisions. So which is nice, right? So like your salespeople can just do their SOPs and tag them, and then it'll create like, the internal sales wiki. And then your delivery people will like do whatever production stuff that they have and just tag it. And then it'll build out its own table of contents, which is really beautiful. So there's no, it's kind of like a decentralized internal knowledge base. So I really like it because different departments can use it and it's very easy to delegate.
What did you say the name of it was? GetGuru?
GetGuru. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And I think both of them are about like $12 a person. If you're trying to cut costs, you could always do like the SMEs who are creating the SOPs, and then everybody else could be on LastPass. Have you tried Content AI and Content Snare for wikis? So we have teams that do Content Snare. Amelie, I'm just answering your question. They use Content Snare for onboarding clients. So more of like a client wiki, if it were, Amelie. I haven't used Content AI, but I will put that on my list. So if you want to share about it, I'm all ears. And then Airtable, Priyanka, I really like as well, but more of a database. Not really a wiki, I would say. Yeah, I would say that. Like I love that more for, it's just like the databases where you put all of like the information. Sometimes people use it as like a place where people can find links and stuff like that. It's not my favorite. I find it redundant, but that's not here. We all have like our special things. Okay, cool. Yeah, so Amelie, if once you try it, just you can email me, hit me up, tell me what you think, because I'm always looking at new tools. Jim, so one, I would start, with the centralization if you got things, and then I'd create a project plan for which SOPs are going to be created. Like which ones need to be created, which ones need to be updated, which ones do you already have? So you can check it off, right? Because sometimes like creating SOPs, it's a long-term project. Like it's not something that you're like, oh, I'm gonna create this tomorrow. Because usually you just end up with so many things. So I would say create a project plan for it, and then you can start marking it off and delegating it per department. It'll just make your life easier, but you want to be able to like see and have deadlines for it. Makes sense, Jim?
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Go for it.
So nice to meet you, actually. Talk to in there. But can you just give a little bit more clarity on going from the transcription and leveraging Chat GPT to actually create the SOP? So are you like taking that transcription and inputting that into Chat GPT? Sure. Yeah.
Here, I'll show you a couple of, I was like, show and tell, so much better than me talking about it. So what did I do here? Let me blow this up. So if you're on my mailing list, I think most of you are, I sent this out want to say last week, but I can show it to you and then go through it. Okay. So, okay. So SOP, so one of the things with, so I'm going to just back up just for everybody, just so that everyone's on the same page. When you're creating a prompt in Chat GPT, right? And I know some of you have used Chat GPT, some of you haven't. GPT-4 just opened up this morning if you're paying for the upgraded version. And it is a mediocre individual contributor employee. Okay. If you're thinking that, you could just outsource whatever you want and it's going to be all wonderful and fancy and shiny. No, it still needs a lot of supervision. It needs revisions. You can't necessarily trust it 100%. It's gotten a lot better. So if you're using GPT-4, they're like, oh man, like it now scored in the 90th percentile of, the bar. But take any young individual who just passed the bar and ask them if they're a great lawyer. No, they are not, right? They are still an individual contributor. So I just want to say that so that when you're putting stuff together, just know that. Now, what it's actually really good at, which I'm going to get into the prompt creation, it's really good at synthesizing. It's really good at categorizing. It's really good at labeling, which makes the SOP creation rather a great skill of the bot. But there's a couple of places where it gets a little funky, so I will share this with you. So if you're taking a transcript and you're using GPT-3, or you're using the free version of Chat GPT, not the upgraded version, it could take about 12 to 15 minutes of video transcript. All right, Rodney? So if you're using the upgraded version, now it can take up to 25,000 words, which means it could take up to 2.5 to 3.5 hours of video transcript. Yeah, that's a difference. It's a big difference, right? People are like, what's the difference? It's not that. I'm like, no. The input value is huge. So if you're in the process of doing a shitload of like SOP creation and you've got video transcripts that you want to, like, it's worth the $20 a month. So just to, if you're pricing it out per se. Okay, so now we're gonna go into the prompts. So with the prompts, you want to give it context, right? And so you want to give it a thing to do, right? Like write an SOP is a proper prompt, like it actually understands that. You also may want to say who it's for or who you want it to be. So what do I mean by that? I am a marketing manager writing an SOP for my new employee. Here is the transcript. Create the SOP for me. So when you are creating prompts, you want to give it as much context as possible. So you will literally create the prompt. This one was I was just testing this. What was this one about? This was a 3-minute video. And I was writing about an SOP for creating a LinkedIn event, right? So this was the prompt. This was it. It was a very short transcript and it gave the step-by-step guide. It was very straightforward. So that was 3-5-minute video. So this one is a prompt where I asked it to create a decision tree. Now, the reason why I did that was because I had paid for a workshop with one of the most brilliant people that I know who does SEO. He is not a trainer. He does not know how to train, right? Like, brilliant subject matter expert. Not a great trainer. Now I would still pay, and then I paid him for another workshop and another workshop. Because I can take the information and then create a decision tree by myself. But I was like, ooh, I wonder if Chat GPT can do it for me. So if you have someone that's not a great expert and or someone who's trying to train on analysis, right? So for example, if you have a campaign running and you need to create an SOP for campaign benchmarks, right? And that will have various outcomes for what someone is going to do to optimize a campaign, for example, right? So like, all right, so if the cost per, click is this, then you do this. If the cost per acquisition is this, then you do that, right? Like, then your SOP is really more of an analysis. So the prompt that you want to give is an actual decision tree. So in this case, I was like, create a decision tree on whether something is X or blah, blah, based on this conversation. And I just laid out the transcript, right? And that transcript, I think, was about 12 minutes. And then here's a decision tree outlining the process for determining whether something is a page or a hub cluster based on the conversation. It just laid it out, which I thought was really impressive. So, and I'll just like put this into the chat so you guys can have it. I mean, I sent it out as an email. It's not proprietary. It's not anything like, I'll be like, it's not special. The other thing, and I don't think we need to do this one as much, but again, if you're on the free version, merging SOPs. This also works really well with, let's say you have an old SOP and now someone's training on something new. And you're like, crap. I don't have time to merge it or figure out where the differences are. You can ask it to label. So labeling is a good prompt right? So it's like, create the first SOP, done, and label it this within the same chat, right? So you don't want to like do it on a separate chat because they won't know what you're talking about. So if you do it within the same chat, I asked it to remember something and it was like, as an AI language model, I don't have the ability to remember. So I told it to label. It's like, label this, then it like did that. And then I asked it to combine it with the original one, which was labeled, right? So that works really well, right? Or if you have a training done by someone and then a training done by somebody else, you need to combine it, right? Right? Or if you got two workflows that you want to merge, that's another really good case study when you're creating SOPs, right? Or you did a training with someone, right? It was like a live training. They asked you questions, blah, blah. You're like, okay, now go do it. Ask me questions, right? And then you do a second training, right? Now you've got a more fully fledged out SOP. Rodney, I'm gonna stop here. What are you thinking? Because I see your brain.
Yeah, no, this is actually very helpful. Just kind of just giving me the behind the scenes walkthrough of how to do it. It's kind of allowing me to connect the dots. Yeah, it's kind of mind blowing. Yeah, it's definitely very helpful.
All right, cool. And then if you just want to fuck with it, I often ask it to explain things like M&M, just because it's fun. Makes it a little less boring. So this is for people who are doing content creation. Also, like, this is not a content creation thing, but like if you give it an artist name that's well known before 2021, you can create tonality around that artist name. So, and then if you get stuck, so I do this all the time. I'm like, I don't know what to ask the thing because I'm just like, nah. So like I just ask it for its own ability, right? So it's almost like if you were to ask an employee, like, hey, rate yourself, like, can you like, do you feel comfortable talking to clients yet? Do you feel comfortable, like, with this campaign? Like, how well do you think that you can do blah, blah, blah? I do the same thing with Chat GPT. I will just literally ask it like stuff if I don't know. So there's a conversation. I was like, oh, because I'm always nice to the bot. Like, I'm always afraid they're going to become sentient. So I want to be one of the nice humans. Someone was like, hola. And then it like answered me in Spanish. And I didn't know that it had 27 translations. So I was like, do you transcribe in Spanish? And it said, yes. So I was like, oh, dope. Then I'm like, like, all right, I'm like, what are your best skills? And I'm like, please write it in English. And so it told me, and I was like, oh, great. So I will ask it things if I don't know. So if you're like new to it, or if you just ask it. So the other day I was like, it's like trying to figure out like what it's called when it knows what to do. And apparently it has consciousness, not metacognition. It told me very clearly it had no metacognition yet. So that I know. So here's a prompt. You basically tell it that it is a prompt generator robot. You need to gather information about blah, 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 right? You're asking it to ask you follow-up questions so that it can create a prompt for itself. And so now it can Socratically generate a prompt for you that you do not know how to think of yet. Jim, do you want to share your thoughts?
No, I was just laughing at you, and you're like, if you're just like, that's all.
Like, so, okay. Right, and so it'll be like, hello, I'm Chat GPT, a prompt generator robot, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Okay. So this is just some of the prompt, like, specifics. That way you guys can, I will just share this with you all, because I was thinking that's a good idea. I think let me know if you have, well, actually ask for access, because I'm not giving it to everybody. Any questions now that we've actually seen some of the prompts or ideas that you're having?
So this is Laura. One of the challenges we have is too much documentation, where people have been documenting processes over the years, and so we're creating a global playbook for all the ways that we work, and everyone's pulling all their documentation in, but everybody does things slightly differently. It seems like the combination prompt you're talking about here might work, where we could feed it like 3 different creative briefs and ask it to come up with, can it tell what the best versions are, or would it simply mesh those and basically dedupe them from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I would do, and this is one of my favorite things, documentation elimination. So like, you want to basically, I remember one time we were in teamwork and we had a client with 180 fucking templates. I shit you not. It was
that's
like,
nothing. You probably have 500.
Oh, this is so good. So I would say get really like have someone that is somewhere, like, do you have it like centralized?
Yeah, we have a centralized place, but there's so many dupes, but we can't really, so there's so many for different edge cases, right? And that's part of the problem. So people keep, as classic behavior is, keep replicating something, taking a template and then customizing it further for a particular use case. And then over time, the templates just kind of dissolve under the weight of reuse and repurposing. So trying to figure out, sort of like trying to take like a stew and reduce it back to the original soup stock it started from, but better soup stock than you started with, because you've had all these, and it may be harder, or it may be impossible to do this right now. We may need to just like do kind of 2 reduced to 1, then another 2 reduced to that 1, and then combine those 2. I don't know. There might be some way to like kind of reverse tree it to combine best ofs of pairings or something.
Yeah, I wouldn't combine, because that's just that's gonna get a little hairy. I would and this is across the board, right?
It's just various creative briefs, various like roadmaps for projects, and they're all useful, but they're written by different people, and even though they started from the same template, they ended up being quite different, and the templates no longer address the variables anymore.
Yeah, so I would and they are centralized, you said, right? So
they're centralized. We have them in a shared Google Drive. Yeah.
Okay, so I would have someone itemize them, right?
Mhm.
Someone who is junior, because that is not a task for anyone that has a management salary. So I would get someone junior to itemize them, right? And just like list them in a spreadsheet or your project management system, right? So that way you can see how many dupes per category you have. And then, so creative briefs is a perfect one, right? So it's like you end up with 7 creative briefs that are labeled templates, right? Like unless you have 7 completely different avatars, you do not need, and
Exactly. But one might be from 2019 ones. Part of it, you can
exactly.
patch the older ones, but sometimes the older ones have nuggets that fell off the newer ones that you want to return.
Yes.
So I guess I'm
So
seeking sort of best practices. Is it possible to use it to find best practices and then apply them to multiple versions of a piece to come up with the best version of that piece?
yeah, you can say combine, right?
Combine.
So
Okay.
combine these,
Yeah.
combine with the prompt.
Okay.
The if it's like in other data and you're trying to find something, it would be find themes. But that's more for data sets, not for document sets, if
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yeah, that does.
Because we were looking at I was the other day, we had like 300 and something. I was looking at sales applications for prior so before people drop on a sales call, they do an application.
Yep.
And one of the questions is like, what is your biggest bottleneck? And I think we had like 300 and something survey answers. So I just stuck it in Chat GPT and I was like, give me the top 10 themes.
Yep. So it's great for the synthesis piece.
The
It may
synthesis
not
is
be able to
really
make
good.
judgment calls.
It may not be able to make judgment calls, but if you give it enough prompt information, it can. You just need someone to supervise the judgment calls.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay.
So
Super
if you were
helpful.
like, so if you're like, we are doing a client brief for this type of client, please, give me a combination of please combine this into, a one content brief, right? Take these 5 content briefs and combine them into one, and then you stick it in there, see what it gives you back.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Right.
Great.
But yeah, absolutely, Laura. But I would still itemize it so you can see what is there, right? Because when you're looking at SOPs, the old stuff may have nuggets, but what I would actually find the best person who is doing the best work on your team and figure out what template they're using.
Yep.
Because that's probably the most relevant, right? That's how I would shorthand it. So I would like take a look at that, figure out if it's relevant, if it's not, and then compare it to whatever's like the most recent or the most used, right? Like because as opposed to, because I would, use chat, see if you can get a combination. And like I said, like you need someone to do some judgment calls. So itemize it and then start to eliminate as much as you possibly can. Okay. And in the future, from a policy standpoint, so that this doesn't happen again, it's like, okay, you want to have a naming convention, like here's templates. If you're having like variations from the template, you can label it whatever you want to label inside of X place where things go to get archived, but you don't put it in the centralized templates, right? So that way people aren't clogging up your templates anymore.
Yeah, agreed.
And if they think that the template should be improved or optimized, or like, like there's a change and they're like, oh shit, like we really need to, do this template, then create a system so that, someone can be like, hey, can we update this? And then, someone approves it. There's some like level of verification process. And then they can, and then like now you have a new template. So Jim, to your earlier point with GetGuru, GetGuru has like a verification process that's automatic. So if someone wants to make changes, they submit changes, you verify as a subject matter expert, and it's just automatic. That's another reason why I really like it.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Any other questions?
Julian, could you see, can you hear me?
Yeah, Priyanka and then Rodney, I got you next. Yes.
Did you see any kind of, what do you call, limitation of the software of not knowing, like, because if you're saying to like a prompt, like I am a marketing director and I'm creating this SOP for this team member. Let's say I'm a chief operating officer creating this, or is there any limitation did you see yet with the AI that it can't identify the role or?
No, it's actually really good at role identification. That I can actually say is one of the strengths. I have a mentee who ended up she's in Vegas, and she gave me I was like, she's in a transitionary period. And I was like, I was like, do your ikagi, figure out where your purpose meets your happiness, like meets where you can get paid. And then figure out the stuff that you actually want to do in a role description, be as crazy as you want. And she wrote a pretty random role description. and I did not know how to respond. So I literally stuck it in Chat GPT and was like, give me roles that fit these day-to-day activities. And it did. I was very surprised. So when it comes to role identification, I would say it's actually really good.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like I don't think it's great at certain things, but others it's really pretty particularly here. And I'll share screen with you guys just so you can see it. So you know what I'm talking about, like the real life example, so that so what type of businesses have these activities listed at prime activities, right? So creative director, dancing, the schmezzy kind, graphic design, pivot like a K-pop dancer, putting together aesthetics, creating a vibe, right? So don't hate the player, hate the game. And so it was like advertising agencies, fashion, beauty brands, marketing and branding firms, nightlife and entertainment venues, high-end hospitality and tourism companies. Like it was specific too. It wasn't like, so I was pretty impressed by its ability to do roles and responsibilities across the board.
And that's awesome. And Julian, like what was Juliana? Is that how you say it? Your name?
Yeah, Juliana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is the 25,000? Is that the word limit for the day?
No, that's the word limit for the prompt.
Oh, interesting.
So remember when we gave it like a transcript, right? So like we have the nice little prompt, but then we have like the data set, that's attached to the prompt. So it can take, 25,000 words now, as a prompt. So like for Laura, right? If let's say she had, 4, I'm making this up, 1,000 word SOPs, right? That's 4,000. It could only do 3. So one of these SOPs would be asked out, right? So she would have to fabricate how she did her prompts and combine it. Whereas now she can, she could put 25, right? Or maybe, right, she could put 24 because she still has to like tell it to do something of those SOPs and then say now synthesize. So
that's amazing.
Wow. I haven't played with that yet. So we'll find out.
And I saw some videos which was like people were giving case studies with numbers. Like if I'm making this much as a revenue, and if I want to make this much as a profit, like what are the ways I can improve and everything. So it was very cool that it can also do like decision making and give you the solution too.
Yeah, it can do it. I mean, it could do math. It could do really good math. It can do coding. And then this morning, you can't do it in Chat GPT yet. Because I was trying to play with it this morning. I was tinkering with it. So like yesterday they had like basically like OpenAI did its, like developer thing, conference, and it's now going to be able to take images, and then it's going to be able to do image to text. So, yes, Jim, I am automatically getting GPT-4 right now because it opened up this morning. So from an operations standpoint, what I'm geeked out on is I'm a very visual person, and a lot of our audience who are marketers and creatives are also visual, right? So I'm like, can we take now a flow chart? I haven't been able to play with this yet. Can we take a flow chart and then now have it create a step-by-step process from a flow chart, right? So anyone who's funnel hacking, right? Like, I mean, like then we get into like the nuance of things, right? Like, so if you're funnel hacking or if you're a brand strategist, or, you're thinking through like an entire process soup to nuts, or you're doing a, like a service blueprint or something, can you draw it out if you're very visual or if you're designing, and then it'll spit out for you the step-by-step, which is awesome. And then you take that step-by-step and now you stick that into your project management tool. So you can now projectize a process from a design standpoint.
That is amazing.
Hopefully, yeah. So once I get it to like, so once I start playing with it, like once we have access, because like the way that they showed it yesterday was on Discord. So they created so they opened up the API, they created like a small like Discord bot so that it would do it. I do know someone who basically opened up and created a Slack channel. So I'm like, ooh, I wonder if you could do the same thing with Slack and then give it images and then have it do it there. So still geeking out, but it was yesterday. So but I'm excited. I mean, if we play with that, then I might do one of the AMAs on that in the next couple months. So that'll be fun. Any more questions? Yes, go for it, Roddy.
Yeah, so man, just hearing your feedback right now, I got my creative gears turning. But my question was on like the SOP best practices. And so you kind of mentioned like, yeah, you can record having a video, and even better is having a video and the SOP like text. And then having the subject matter expert be the one to record the content, and then you're going to take that SOP to train your team member. Mm-hmm. Is it better to, like, after you have that subject matter, create that SOP and then you train the team member, you're having the team member that you train that SOP on do those steps back to you for like QA to make sure they understand the process? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So
it would get a little bit more quality to just like make sure they understand it.
Yeah. So dirty draft. So let's say you're trying to do best practices, but like B1, right? Dirty drafts. Get a place where you're centralizing stuff, right? And it's got either some level of table of contents or some kind of tagging that is the same taxonomy as your project management system, and then as your document management system. So what do I mean by that, right? So think documents, project management, SOPs, right? So you've got a place or a folder or a workspace or a tag for operations. You got something else for financials. You got something else for sales, right? I often think of these, especially as you're scaling, as like business divisions or business teams, because in the future, like, these will section out and then eventually you'll have heads or leads of each of these, right? So that way it'll be easier to think of it that way, right? Client work would go under either like production or client work or whatever you want to call that, right? Delivery. So you have everything nicely categorized, right? And so that way, if people are in your project management system, but then they need a document for a client, like they know and they're trained on where to find things, because the average employee spends 2 hours a week just trying to find shit, right? Multiply that by the number of employees and or team members you have, and then by 50 weeks a year, it's a lot of overhead on people just trying to find stuff. So step one, just make sure that it's organized. Two, on that dirty drafts, right? Like now that it's organized, stick a video in there, right? Like if you just have the video, that's step one. Just so that like if you get someone new, or you got to fire someone, or someone's out, they're on vacation, like at least you could go in and figure out what the hell to do, right? So create the video. Step two, from that video, like now you can start to write out SOPs, right? Because not everyone's audio, like some people are audio, some people are visual, some people are kinesthetic, they got to play with the thing. So like your SOPs, you want to be able to match people's different learning styles, which is why I would recommend video and written instructions for different peeps. And so that's where you go, okay, we have the video, then you've got the transcription. From the transcription, you create like, you know, nicely stepped SOP. Then at some point, you're going to get feedback from people, right? Because subject matter experts aren't, you know, like expert SOP creators, right? Like they're gonna miss stuff. Like we're gonna miss stuff. I miss stuff. So people are like, oh, what did you mean by that? Or why did you choose that? Or why did you press that button and not this button, right? So you're gonna get questions. Use those questions to then, you know, update the SOP and make it better for new people. So that's that optimization cycle.
That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions? SOP creation. And the one thing that I would say is like, now there's so many tools. I would absolutely make sure that wherever you got your video, you got automatic transcription. Like I remember back in the day paying like $1 a minute or $1 a word to, you know, have people offshore like type out transcription because we needed captions and stuff. Like I'm like, we don't have to do that anymore. Just get your transcript, right? So I think I kicked out of Fathom, so I know you got Fathom, Rodney. You know, so Fathom is free. There's Fireflies, like there's tons of shit that you can like attach to Zoom now to get automatic transcription. So I would do that absolutely. So whenever you or anyone is training on your team, you just have that transcription ready to go. It'll cut out the step. Yeah, and you can easily copy paste it. I think I wrote about Loom the other day, and my ops manager gave me shit, but because I was like, my issue with Loom or some of these is like when you have the transcription, you easily copy paste it into Chat GPT. I just, you know, if you have someone like, let's say they're in Vietnam and like they've got, you know, poor laptop CPU and you've got a VA taking a transcription and then sticking it in Chat GPT or whatever. If they're downloading it to their computer, then opening up another app to copy paste it, it's a lot more steps. What you want to be able to do, and I know that I'm getting like super into the weeds of the nuance here, but it has to do with speed and then and computer capacity, right? So like if you're slowing down your computer, you're slowing down your process. So if they got to do a lot more steps to get the transcript, it's just a pain. So you know, obviously look at your cost, but also like how quickly is it to just go from one thing to the other to make it just go faster, especially if you have someone, you know, with lower computer space. Like, I mean, yeah, like, I mean, I've done work, especially like, even if they have decent computer space, but if like their internet speed is like crap, like it just slows down your computer. Like I've done work from all over South Asia, just a pain. So make it easy on your people if they're offshore. All right, well, Roddy, I'm so happy that you were able to hop on. All right, so I'm happy to stay, but for those of you who have a hard stop, I did say this was going to be a no pitch event. I really meant it. I do have one free offer, and it is our ops diagnostic. So let me share with you. I think some of you have done it. If you're on the mailing list, I'm like, you should do it. So we have our ops diagnostic now. It used to take like 25 minutes, and I had to sell it to people like, hey, do it. It's really good for your business. And now we've got it down to 5 minutes. It's awesome. It literally is like it's like the little diagnostic that could. We recently got it into Small Business Trends and over like 100 different publications. Like, it's really awesome. You do it on Typeform. It takes 5 minutes, and it often, you can get about like 5 hours a week on average back just by doing this, because you're able to see 50 operational gaps in 5 minutes. Like, you do it in Typeform, we get an automation, and then a human will send it over to you. So you'll get it within like 24 hours. So that's pretty awesome. And then you could see the inner workings of your operations. And because we've had over 500 people do it, you can also see how you stack up against your peer group. So if you're under 250, it'll show you how you're doing against people who are like under 250. If you're like 250 to 500, 500 to 1 million, 1 to 3, 3 to 7. So it'll show you exactly how you're doing against your peer group, which is awesome. And so we'll send that out to you. And then if you want a recording, like a little bit of analysis, let me know. And then I'll send that over to you as well. And I can give you some insights. I geek out on this stuff. We've, been doing this now for like 7 years. It's literally the favorite thing of my business. It diagnoses and prescribes. It's a phenomenal tool. So I absolutely recommend, if you haven't done it with us, do it. If you've done it, over the last 6 months, you should redo it again. We make our clients do it about every couple months. And I absolutely recommend that you kind of get a snapshot. Our best clients have their leadership team do it. So it's also a management tool, because what you can see is a cross section of your visibility into the organization, which is phenomenal.